My father owns a small delivery service that operates out of Farmington, New Mexico. We mostly deliver small packages out to the middle of nowhere that are too much of a hassle for larger delivery companies to bother with. My dad is the only employee, and we have a few pickup trucks and a trailer. One day we got a delivery out to Window Rock, Arizona, on the Navajo reservation about 2 hours from Farmington. My dad got the call for the job while he was chilling with his Navajo friend, Travis, and his girlfriend. Travis mentioned how he had family in Window Rock that he hadn't seen in ages and suggested that we go with him. I was about 6 or 7 at the time, and it was summertime, so my dad decided we'd go down together. He could do his delivery really quickly, then while Travis saw his family, we could go check out the Window Rock, a big rock face with a large hole in it that went to the other side. We had to convoy in separate trucks since my dad's was loaded down with freight. We decided to bring along some walkie-talkies so we could communicate with one another. We spent our time in Window Rock. Everything was generally uneventful, and we started heading back home along the old highway with my dad and I in the front, and Travis and his girlfriend in their truck behind us. I honestly don't remember most of the Window Rock trip, but this next part I can never forget. We were somewhere on the highway between Window Rock and Gallup, New Mexico. It had just rained earlier in the day and the road was kind of slick, so we were taking it pretty slowly. On the left of the highway there was nothing but sandstone cliffs, and on the right there was a huge field separated from the road by a small barbed wire fence. We crested the top of the hill, and down at the bottom of the hill we saw what appeared to be a very large dog, sitting back on its haunches in the middle of the road, facing the cliffs. My dad called over the radio, "Hey Trav, do you see that huge dog?" Travis started yelling back over the radio, "That's not a dog. Speed up right now and hit it." He sounded almost hysterical. He just kept screaming, "You have to hit it. Please. Hit that thing right now." So my dad started to speed up, and as we got a bit closer, I could begin to see it a little more clearly. It's covered in this brown, wiry, matted hair that appeared to have dried blood all over it. It was still facing the cliffs, but the moment our headlights hit it, it turned and looked at us, and it had a face. Look, I don't know how else to describe it other than a mix between a bear's and a human's face. It looked twisted and distorted and almost in pain. As we got closer to this thing, we started to realize how big it actually was. Though it was still sitting on its haunches, it was about shoulder height with the hood of the truck. We got literally inches from hitting it when it let out this scream. It sounded like someone screaming as their lungs were filling with water, and it leapt backwards towards the field, landing just on our side of the barbed wire fence. Then, with another leap, it was gone from sight. Travis came over the radio again. "Keep driving. We have to get out of here. We have to go faster." He kept repeating that last part. Pretty soon, we were speeding like crazy, and just as we started to come near the outskirts of Gallup, we got pulled over. Travis pulled his truck over with us. Naturally, this made the cop, a Navajo man himself, very on edge, and he immediately asked why Travis felt the need to pull over as well. Travis said, "We just saw a Skinwalker a few miles back and it's been following us." The officer immediately turned white, stammered something about a verbal warning, and got in his car and took off. We did the same. We didn't see anything else that night, but when we got home, Travis refused to let us leave without taking some kind of Navajo totem thing that was supposed to keep it away. Anybody that has been on the Navajo reservation has either probably heard of some creepy things or experienced them themselves, namely Skinwalkers. I've only seen one. Here is my story. I come from a small town in northern Arizona that's sandwiched between the Paiute Reservation to the north and the U.S.'s largest Navajo reservation to the south. My high school being so small, a 1A high school that has, on average, 80 students enrolled every year, we always had to travel south about 5 to 10 hours one way to play another high school in any sport. This means that we traveled a lot on the Navajo Res. And we also usually stayed at hotels when we would head out to play and come home in the morning, but this trip was a little bit different. I remember the basketball coach saying that the school didn't have enough money to put up the teams in a hotel, so we were going to have to be on the road for a total of about 12 hours. I was the only male senior to play basketball that season. We had just got done playing our game and headed home on our bus, Big Blue. We were headed out, and it wasn't long, about 2 hours of driving before we had entered the res. By this time, everyone was asleep, with it being about 2 in the morning. When we had crossed the res's border, I noticed the bus driver had sped up and was now going about 85 miles per hour. I thought this was a little weird because he usually never exceeded the speed limit, at least not in my high school career. For some reason, I couldn't fall asleep like the rest of my teammates, and I just sat at the back of the bus staring out across the desolate desert landscape, lit up by the full moon. As I looked down, I could see a figure running towards the bus at an angle of pursuit and keeping up with the bus at 85 miles per hour. As the figure got closer, I saw that it was a humanoid form. As a matter of fact, it looked exactly like a human, except that the face was painted half black and half white with glowing eyes. Glowing eyes like a rabbit's eyes reflecting light from a spotlight. I immediately thought, holy crap, it's a Skinwalker. The Skinwalker ran up to the edge of the road and just kept up pace with the bus, hurtling sagebrush and rocks while staring at me. After I made eye contact with the thing, I could not look away. It was as if something was holding my head and eyes in place. The Skinwalker just smiled at me, this inhuman smile that went ear to ear, showing a mouthful of crooked, yellow, pointed teeth. I felt like I was going to throw up, and I was panicking through the whole ordeal. The Skinwalker started to crumple down onto all fours, still keeping up with the bus. I could see its bones crack and reform. Hair started appearing all over the Skinwalker's body, and in about 3 seconds, it was now a coyote, and it ran off back into the desert, out of view. As soon as it was gone, I ran to the onboard bathroom and puked a mixture of food and blood. I didn't want to tell anyone for fear they would think I was crazy, but I confided in my Navajo friend. She told me that I needed to see the chief, who also happened to be a friend of mine, and get a blessing. I saw him the next school day in the parking lot. He just came up to me and mumbled something in Navajo while waving a feathered scepter-like thing. He turned around, got in his truck, and drove away. To this day, I haven't seen another Skinwalker. It might be due to the fact that I moved away from the town and res, and if I do have to go south, I go around, way around. As many of you might already know, many Navajo people, including my own family, are very reluctant to speak about skinwalkers because it's believed to attract their attention. Well, I, however, grew up away from the Navajo Nation and was very naive about the subject. When it came to skinwalkers, I was an absolute skeptic. My mom used to tell a story of how, back in the 80s, when she lived with her siblings and my grandparents, still in Shiprock but the southern outskirts, about how she and my aunt saw a skinwalker just outside their driveway under a streetlight. She described it as a black dog with dirty fur, a twisted noodle-like front leg, and these unnatural eyes with a soft, burnt orange glow. Me being my own closed-minded self doubted every word, but I never said my doubts aloud. But these doubts totally changed last year when I went to my grandparents' house in October. Me and my family had just left the carnival at the Navajo Nation Fair and called it a night. The house was close enough to where we could walk home in just 10 minutes, so we did. When we got there, it was about 9 at night, and we stayed up until 2, catching up about family affairs and local news. It was during that time that I just decidedly opened my mouth and blurted out the question, "Hey, are skinwalkers real, guys?" I asked. "You shouldn't be speaking about that," my grandma said with an almost disturbed yell in her voice. So she and my grandfather both decided to go to bed. After being scolded by my mom, one of my aunts chimed in with a very cautious tone and said, "They're real, all right." Had a few start screaming outside of my trailer in Farmington just a few nights ago. Your cousin had nightmares the whole night and woke up crying that morning. Not wanting to push the discomfort any farther, we all decided to go to bed. Now the trailer/home is pretty old and it was a really nice night, so we slept with the windows open with screens to prevent bugs from coming in. Everyone had drifted off to sleep except me because my mind was still going a million miles a minute about skinwalkers, and I wondered if I'd ever encounter one while here on the reservation. As a kid, I was told it's taboo to think about skinwalkers because it can still call their attention. That's when things went totally haywire. Just as I was settling and finally getting relaxed for sleep, I started to hear something moving outside. I got up from the couch and started wandering over to the kitchen window. In the trailer, all of the rooms have the lights out, so the only visible light that can be seen is from the porch light out front. I was thankful for this because I told myself if it really was a skinwalker outside, then hopefully it wouldn't notice me seeing it. So I mustered up the courage and took a quick scan of outside. From the porch light, all I could see was the dusty ground and the vehicles that my family drove, along with some old metal trash cans that stood beside the road. Looking for about a good 5 seconds, I wasn't able to see anything, so I was getting ready to turn around and walk back to bed. I was thinking it was just a stray cat or something. I had only taken 2 steps, and I heard what sounded like a distorted scream coming from outside, definitely close by. Fear rising, I looked outside again, and there I saw it. A coyote-like figure was staring in my direction from behind the cars, just outside of the reach of the porch light. Only it looked awfully wrong and gave off an evil vibe just from seeing it. It was gray with very disheveled hair, and a horrific orange-red soft glow came from its eyes. I hopped out and ran back to the bedroom. It was at this moment I began to notice an awful stench in the air that smelled like rotting meat. I started trying to wake up my mom, who was like, "Oh my God, it's almost 3 a.m., what do you want?" I immediately began in a shaken voice, "There's something scary outside." Then she said, being annoyed because I woke her up, It's probably just a stray animal or something. It's the res, animals wander all the time at night." She clearly wasn't taking me seriously, so I told her, "Mom, please, I really need you." That got her attention. "What are you talking about?" she said. Then we heard it. The thing outside started making more of its dreadful screams and started what sounded like thrashing outside on the ground. "Hear that? That's what I'm talking about." So both her and I got back up and looked outside the window, and the coyote thing was making its way to the door. It walked with an odd limp and dragged its back right leg as if it was handicapped. We could hear it start to scratch against the door and make this odd muffled moaning sound. My mom went and got my dad, and they both started shouting in Navajo all sorts of words, telling the thing to go away and saying it's not welcome here. All this commotion was enough to get the rest of the trailer up as they came out into the hallway. The only thing my mom did was turn to them and said, "Skinwalker," while proceeding to point to the door. Apparently, they already knew exactly what to do as my grandfather got out a handgun from a drawer and a bag of ashes. He coated a few bullets and loaded them into the gun and went straight to the door. Yelling out more Navajo that was far too fast for me to comprehend, he swung the door open and fired twice. Nothing. The thing managed to escape before my grandpa could put a bullet in it. "That's the fastest one I've ever seen," said my grandpa. Next thing you know, my aunts and my parents were freaking out about what just happened, saying stuff like, "What if it comes back tomorrow?" And, "It saw us. Does that mean we're targets now?" Afterwards, my grandparents calmed everyone down, myself included, saying we'd be fine, and we all went to bed around 3. Morning came, and my grandparents called one of their neighbors and explained to them what had happened. Apparently, one of them was a medicine man who used to partake in Navajo ceremonies used for healing and curing sickness, and came over to bless each family member in the grounds outside. Throughout my childhood, my father and I used to take late-night walks due to his insomnia. Our neighborhood was generally considered very safe, but now I'm not so sure. All of these walks were very dear memories of mine, except one, which ended up being the last one. Along the road with the tree line, there was a single street light to illuminate a small plot of land that someone owned, but it was very overgrown and ill-kept. It was common for us to walk this road to enjoy the sounds of the forest, the lack of illumination, and the ease of circling back. One ordinary night, as we were walking and making conversation, my father abruptly stopped, pulled me close, put his finger over my mouth, and pointed towards the single illuminated plot roughly 100 yards away. At first, I didn't see anything and thought he was pulling my leg, but just as I began to protest his grasp, I saw a very small humanoid figure, roughly 3 feet in height, scrawny with long limbs, materialize out of the brush line and cautiously take in its surroundings before signaling towards the brush. After a few seconds, 2 other small humanoid figures materialized as well. After a brief moment of what looked to be a discussion, all 3 made a dash for the forest line. Once this happened, my father picked me up, threw me over his shoulder, and made a break for our home, which was roughly half a mile back. Mind you, my father is 6'5" and 220 pounds, but I wasn't exactly light at the time, and he never showed any signs of slowing down, due to adrenaline, I guess. After this night, we never took late-night walks. He installed 4 bright motion detection lights around our plot and brought home a dog. The few times I've tried bringing it up, he didn't want to discuss it, and he made that clear. Those figures still give me chills, and the image of the 3 huddled together is very vivid 15 years later in my mind. I was at this park with my girlfriend at the time that has a neighborhood on one side and a few miles of pretty dense forest on the other. We were stargazing, and as we sat in this opening near the neighborhood, I heard a rustling in the patch of shrubbery that sounded like a person stomping around. I immediately got up to investigate, as this area is known for sketchy activity. What I saw made no sense. I still feel like I imagined it or something. I saw what looked like a person hunched over with a white cloth over them walk out of the bushes and stand on the path that goes around the entire park. I turned to my girlfriend and asked her what it looked like without telling her what it looked like to me, and she described it exactly as I did. So we hightailed it out of there. We booked it to my car and got in, and I, wanting to know what it was, turned on the high beams in hopes that it would follow us. It did not. Now this is where the story gets even stranger. We went to another park because we wanted to continue stargazing, so we drove a few miles to essentially what is a giant field. We found a bench and sat down and managed to forget about that weird encounter. After about 10 or 15 minutes of this, we suddenly saw, not heard, mind you, what appeared to be a black helicopter fly over us in the direction of that first park. It was completely silent, no noise at all. I have not been able to find any pictures online that come close to what it looked like, but if you're familiar with Halo Reach, it looked like a falcon. This thing maneuvered like nothing I've ever seen. Granted, I don't know much about aviation, but it dipped over a tree line at an angle so steep we thought it was going to crash. The weirdest part of all is that there was someone else at this second park, an old woman walking her dog who didn't react to the plane/helicopter at all. It was by far the strangest night of my life. I've yet to return to either park, and I really don't plan on doing so. There's some really strange things out there. This all happened about 5 years ago. One night, a few of my friends decided after a night of hanging out that we'd go on an adventure at about 3 a.m. We took a ride about 50 miles to this old Spanish ruin in New Mexico that was once the seat of the Inquisition. I can't for the life of me remember what the place is called. So we jumped the front gate to the place and started exploring. One of my friends brought a flute with him and started playing it, and about 30 seconds into his, shall we say, mediocre playing, something started screaming really, really loud on the tops of the long destroyed walls of the place. It was going from wall to wall really quickly, screaming the most blood-curdling scream you've ever imagined. At that moment, we booked it and got the hell out of there, and drove for a few hours to Bandelier National Monument, where we planned to camp out for the rest of the weekend. We got to Bandelier at about 6 or 7 a.m. to set up our camp. After a few hours talking about what the hell happened at the ruins, I went to take a piss behind a tree about 300 feet from our camp. This is where everything started getting a little fuzzy. I remember seeing 2 dust devils coming my way, and when I turned around again, 2 of my friends were there, and they were motioning me to follow them. I couldn't help but to follow them, like I was being pulled behind them in shackles. I followed them for what seemed like 10 or 15 minutes, and then I snapped out of it. These couldn't be my friends. They had bright red hair with my friends' faces and cat eyes. Both of my friends were brunette. So I stopped walking, and they turned around and looked at me with the most terrifying gaze I've ever seen. Monsters in movies are nothing compared to this. I turned around and ran as fast as I could back the way I came from. After about 5 minutes of a full sprint, I got back to our camp. Everyone was still there, sitting around talking, and didn't even notice that I was gone. I told them what had happened with the look-alike Skinwalkers, and we packed up everything within probably 10 minutes and headed back to Albuquerque. For good.